Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about lenses. I've mentioned this before, and I'm going to make this a fun Friday video because it's going to be kind of circular, and in the middle of it I'm going to talk a lot about insomnia, and then I'll be back. So I've talked about lenses before. Lenses are the perspective that you and I and everyone tend to see the world through. Everybody has them. You have them. I have them. I talk mostly on this channel about role-playing games and player agency within them and non-linearity of, because that's my lens. That's what I've done for decades. I think it's why most of you are here. What I want to talk about is you always have to be aware, though, of what your lenses are, because it's not always the correct view, and frequently it's not even the best view that you can take of some situation. On this channel, I get a lot of one lens comments. That's come up frequently and wildly different things. When I start talking about engines, so I've shipped games with my own engines. I've shipped games with Unreal, and I've shipped games with Unity. And when I say ship, I mean they've gone from prototype to on the shelf or in a digital store shelf or whatever in that system. I've had many people go, well, you should use Godot, you should use Game Salad, you should use these other engines that are out there. I don't talk about them because I haven't used them. I don't deny that they might be better, but I did talk to a friend of mine who, like me, he's like, I'm going to try one of those out. And he tried using Godot and he really liked it, except when it became time to ship. When you ship a game, you have to realize you have to make SKUs for all the different languages and all the different countries because there's different rules in countries. So even though you may have two countries that both use German, one may have a different level of violence than the other, so you have to make different SKUs. He had trouble with Godot. He explained it to me. I'm like, oh, that's not bad. You got to remember that for the last at least 20 years of my career, that's been a producer problem. I dealt with it early. They deal with it now. So what I got out of talking to him, though, is there isn't a best engine. Even worse, some of the people were recommending Godot to me on this channel. When I asked them, what did you ship with it? They hadn't. They just like it. Which I frequently find when people recommend something, it's because it's what they do. And I think they feel better. Well, if everybody uses it, then I'll feel better about my choice of using this. This has been way more than just engines. Frequently people bring up a methodology. Tim, you should use Agile. You should use Scrum. You should use Waterfall. It's the best. Sometimes it's because that's what they learned in a class. They learned Agile in school. So like Agile is the best. And I'm like, well, my career predates a lot of these methodologies. So I don't know what it is I use. I don't have a label for it. And I don't know what those things are. But I'm told you should use those. Whenever I've asked, what have you shipped with that? How did Agile work in the prototype stage versus the vertical slice stage versus your shipping? I don't know. I just use it. I just have fun. I don't ship anything with it. Okay, then you may not want to be able to recommend that. Same thing with languages. People ask me what programming language I use, and almost always that question is a setup for them to tell me what they use and why they think what they're using is best. I've had someone just push and push and push on using Rust until I finally said, what game did you make with Rust? Have you made a game with Rust? What did you ship with Rust? None. I just think it's the best language. Okay, it might not be good in a production setting, and you don't know. You're just kind of guessing. There's other stuff on here. Whenever any AI comes up, there's always the standard people coming in saying AI is terrible, AI slop. The woke crowd is really consistent saying, oh, that's woke, this is woke, everything's woke. Capitalism is another bugaboo. It's all capitalism. We're in late stage capitalism, blah, 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 blah. It's the same people saying the same things so frequently. Sometimes quotes. I see comments from wildly different people and it's the same line and I realize they're quoting something and I look it up and it's a quote from another YouTube channel or an author or someone famous saying this thing. And I realize, wow, that's their lens. They're viewing everything. It's like they wait until someone even mentions something even remotely relevant to AI or capitalism or computer languages, and then they jump because it's their time to shine. And I can tell you, these suggestions are great in the sense of it's great to hear what different people do. You should always be open to that, no matter where you are in the phase of your game making career. You should be open to that because you're going to get some great suggestions, and you just don't want to shoot them all down. because a great one will come along and you shoot it down. But I do get upset when the person making the suggestion has either tried very little else. So what are you comparing it to? You think this is great compared to what that you've used? Or their solution doesn't address my problem. Like, I'll talk about how really hard it is to localize games, and then they suggest something, and I'm like, did that help you localize your game? I don't know. Well, I'm talking about localization here. Why are you talking about agile when I'm talking about the difficulty of localizing a game? So let's pop this up out of game. Because I always like to give examples that maybe more people can relate to. My insomnia. I've talked about it on here. I've even had a video where I showed me in the midst of it. It was like 3 a.m, my hair sticking up. I'm talking like this. I've had insomnia for years, decades now. I think it started in my 30s. Along with some acid reflux, which I got rid of, and some other things. But the insomnia has dogged me. It's like chronic. It's like doesn't go away. I've had it for years, and I always tell people, I'm very clear when I describe my insomnia. I have no trouble falling asleep. That is not the issue. My problem is I will go to sleep, and I will wake up in 3 to 4 hours, and I just can't get back to sleep. I've had so many recommendations over the years from people who are recommending things, and either it doesn't address what my problem is, or it just doesn't work. One of them was, you have to have a regular sleep schedule. I did. I always would go to bed around the same time. And I've tried adjusting that. I've tried making my bedtime 11 p.m. I've tried moving my bedtime down to 9 p.m. Doesn't work. No matter when I go to bed, I do fall asleep. I just wake up 3 or 4 hours later, and I'm wide awake. I've tried more exercise, especially cardio. I get tired, and again, I fall asleep really fast. That was not the problem. I wake up 3 or 4 hours later, and I'm wide awake. And I'm physically achy from the exercise, but I'm wide awake. I've tried losing weight. I've had doctors and friends say that. I've lost weight. I've been down 40 pounds from what my maximum weight was when I was having sleep issues. No change in my insomnia. I've tried cutting out alcohol. I've tried cutting out caffeine. There were years in my life where I did neither of those. Still had insomnia. I got tested professionally in a sleep study for apnea, because that's something that affects men of certain Zoftig nature. No apnea. I tried reducing stress. I know you guys find that hard to believe, but when I was contracting 5 years ago, it was very little stress, especially at the beginning when I had a few contracts, everything was rolling and nice. I was working about 3 or 4 hours a day. Still had bad insomnia. Someone said, well, you should not allow your dog in the bed. Like, I could keep Abby out of there. I don't know what I would do. I could lock her up, I suppose, but, But I pointed out that I used to have a shepherd, and I adopted the shepherd at an old age. He was like 8 or 9 years old. And he'd been trained not to get up in the bed, and I could not get him to get in the bed. I still had insomnia. A lot of people recommended melatonin, despite the fact that I said I had no trouble falling asleep. I tried it, hoping that when I woke back up in the middle of the night, I'd fall asleep again. It didn't work. I've had people suggest it over and over again. I've pointed out that I don't have any trouble falling asleep and that I have tried it. They wanted me to try different dosages or taking it differently. Like one person said, then go to sleep and take it when you wake up. That didn't really work for me, and it made me really feel groggy in the morning. One person suggested that maybe I have a biphasic sleep pattern. Apparently in the Victorian era, people tended to sleep for a few hours, then get up for an hour or two in the middle of the night, and then go back to sleep. I tried that, but I frequently couldn't get back to sleep. So now I was running around the next day on 3 hours of sleep. Go me. Finally, I've tried napping, but there's something about me physically. I do not enjoy a nap. When I wake up from a nap, I feel really cloudy and groggy until I get sleep that night. So napping is terrible for me because it gives me those extra few hours of sleep, or maybe 45 minutes or whatever I take the nap for, but then I feel super groggy for the rest of the day. Right now, something's working because, as you can tell, I'm pretty boppy and it's light out and it's not 5 a.m. when I'm filming this. I'm taking something called glycine. I'm hoping this is the thing. I just take a couple grams of it an hour before I go to bed. I fall asleep really fast like I always do, But the difference is if I wake up in the middle of the night, first of all, I'm not really remembering it as much. My watch, oh, it's charging right now. But if there was a watch here, it tells me what my sleep hours are. It's showing me waking up and then falling right back to sleep. So it seems to be doing that. I finally found something to address the issue. And the issue was not falling asleep. It was staying asleep all night. Why did I bring all this up? Because of lenses. I hate not being constructive. So I do think I found something that might be working for my insomnia. And so I wanted to say, hey, I want you guys to think of this when you think of your lenses. First of all, be aware of which ones you are. If you're that friend in your friend group who's always talking about one thing, if you see the entire world through capitalism or sexism or racism or homophobia, then you're going to cram a lot of things into that problem, which really is a problem, that don't belong. You also need to be aware of why you have that lens. Why is this so important to you that you try to turn everything into that? Because there's a lot of things that aren't that. And there's other problems that will need your attention that can't be viewed with that lens. And that's the third most important thing. Be aware of those situations where your lens doesn't apply. And then don't apply it. Or at least be aware that you have no perspective on this issue. And that's a good time to listen. So that's what I do. When people talk about non-role-playing games, I just tend to listen. I've never made an action game. I've never made a strategy game. I've never made those. Somebody asked me what game I would like to make if I had my choice. And I said, maybe a space combat game. Because I've never made one. I'd have a lot of stuff to learn. I'd be talking to a lot of people I know in the industry and asking them questions if I made a space combat game. Because I've never made one before. So anyway, please be aware of what lenses you have. It is going to affect everything you do in life. Even if it's just making a game. And that's a fun Friday you can take to the bank. Bye.